Cool. So what we're gonna do, by the way, we should all become researchers, not practitioners, obviously. I mean, come on. What we're gonna do is we're going to go through a little behavior change motivation strategy called WOOP. It's a pretty simple strategy actually, but despite its simplicity, it has pretty tremendous outcomes in terms of effect, in terms of actually changing behaviors, changing habits. So there's been tons of studies and around 20 years of research on the strategy, which is really neat. So this is very scientifically based. And it is a strategy that you can use as practitioners, that you can teach to others, that you can use to help other people or guide other people through behavior change in terms of the things that they commit to, disengage from, and to try and actually increase their motivation. So it's a really neat strategy. Let's go back to something we talked about on day one, which is this idea of The Secret. Remember this absolutely horrific book that tells people that if they just, fantasize, materialize, just manifest things they want, then those things come true, right? And I've been sitting manifesting millions of dollars for days, but nothing has happened. I know, horrible, horrible. These books and this idea of the law of attraction, right, in the sense of karma, like if I do good things and think good thoughts, then good things will happen to me, are obviously nonsense, right? They're like self-help nonsense drivel that people create to make money. Now, this is a little different from, or at least part of the idea in this book, is this idea of positive thinking, right? Of positive fantasies. And that's a little different, right? I'll give you this different perspective. This is Norman Vincent Peale, who wrote a book called The Power of Positive Thinking, right? And he's actually an evangelical preacher turned kind of self-help guru, kind of weird. He was also buds with Richard Nixon, also weird, et cetera, et cetera. Here's what Norman Vincent Peale, the kind of guru of positive thinking, has to say about positive thinking, right? And positive thinking, right? It's just that's having these positive fantasies in your mind about the future, right?
Don't tell me that positive thinking doesn't work.
Damn, Norman, calm down.
So what do you want to be? Ask yourself that question. Don't dodge it. What do you want to be? Then dedicate it to Jesus Christ along with your whole life. And don't doubt it. Believe.
I don't know why they always bring Jesus into it. This is absolutely horrific ads in the US since I think like the last couple of years, where there's like these, it's so nice, so there's like this inspirational music in the background too, and like somebody helps somebody else in need. And then like your thing on is a nice ad, like, helping people. And then at the end it's like Jesus gets us. And like, what? It's like, what? You can also be nice to people without Jesus, by the way. Okay. In any case, this idea of positive thinking, it's a little bit of part of this like law of attraction idea, et cetera, but it's quite different, right? In the sense that it kind of makes sense, right? Like, okay, think positive about the future, right? That should be motivating, right? So I'll ask you, who here thinks the law of attraction works? Karma exists and all that. And you know what? It's okay. You can be honest, if you believe it works. Okay, it doesn't. Okay, right, but like, like sometimes we feel like it does, right? It's cause and effect. Sometimes things do bounce back to us, and we're like, whoa, it could be that, right? Unfortunately, the manifesting money thing doesn't work, but maybe some other things, right? Maybe there's a little bit of truth to those things. What about positive thinking? Who here thinks that positive thinking works in terms of I have a positive fantasy or imagination about the future, and that is motivating and helps me get to that future? Who here thinks that's true? Excellent. I love it. Okay, let's dive into this a tiny bit and figure out if you're right or not. Let's kind of start with this idea of expectations. So these are a series of different studies, and there's a lot of research on this topic in terms of expectations and fantasies. And expectations here are basically predictions, right? As in, I expect to do well on this exam, right? I think I have a good probability of doing well. And it turns out, and this is really not surprising, that expectations of success do predict actual success, right? So for instance, if students who are coming out of university think they're going to get more job offers, they actually do, right? If they expect to get more job offers. Now, you might say, well, that's kind of weird, but no, it's not that weird because people are pretty aware of the opportunities they have, right? Somebody who has a rich dad who is part of a big company, right, and has lots of networks, right, probably is more likely to think that they're going to get a job out of college, and they're also probably likely right? If you have better grades, you're probably going to get a job, right? The number of job offers is probably going to be higher, right? So we have information that we can base our expectations off of, right? This is also true for intimate relationships. For instance, I can predict, right, that I'm going to get together with somebody based off of that. I tend to be somebody who dates a lot or whatever, right? Or I can predict I'm going to do well in a course based off of how well I have done in other courses, right? How academically inclined I am. And I can predict, for instance, based off of, these are actually people who had hip surgery, so who had a broken hip. And if you have a higher expectation of recovering, you actually recover better. That makes sense too, right? Because I know how bad the break was. I know if I have the support for it. I know how young I am, more likely to recover, right? So expectations relating positively to outcomes, not the most surprising thing in the world, and goes back to expectancy theory, right? This idea of room and blah, 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 and the popcorn and the movie theater. Okay. Now, here's something a little bit more interesting. The more people fantasize, as in think positive about potential futures, the less well they do. Now, this is pretty weird, right? Now, it's not necessarily weird that it's not a positive relationship, but I intuitively would have maybe expected kind of just like a null relationship, maybe no relationship, right? As in, if I fantasize about things, that's not really them coming true. So maybe there's just a null relationship. But no, it actually turns out that the more I fantasize about a future success, about a future goal coming true, the more I kind of play this vivid imagery in my mind of that thing coming true, right? Of me getting that outcome, the less well I actually do. So for instance, the more I have these positive fantasies in my mind, right? This imagery of me getting a ton of job offers, the less job offers I actually get. Yes.
So manifestation.
Well, manifestation would be something different. That would be more like the law of attraction, right? But yes, that definitely does not work. But I'm going a step further here to say that even positive thinking not only doesn't work, but it might actually be detrimental, as in it might actually have a negative impact. So for instance, right, the more people, these are, I think, college students, fantasize, right? Have these little fun images about getting together with their crush, right? Being in a relationship, finding that love of your life, all that kind of stuff, right? The less likely they were actually to start an intimate relationship. The more people fantasize about grades. If you sit here right now and you fantasize about getting a good grade in this course, right? That actually may predict getting a worse grade. That is all pretty weird. What is going on here, right? This is pretty freaky, right? The hip motion one's also super interesting because these actions here have really severe outcomes, right? Hip breaks and hip surgery and recovery are really, really serious things among people in the older population because if you stay too long in bed and you don't recover fast enough, you will die. Like it's like really bad stuff, right? You lose muscle mass very, very quickly. Right? So the more these patients are fantasizing about recovering quickly, the worse they do. So it's kind of dangerous, right? And these are pretty intense outcomes. So what's going on here? So I'll give you one potential explanation, which is there's this idea of the hedonic treadmill. And this is the idea that we, desire something, then we work to get it, we enjoy that thing, then we kind of adapt back to baseline, and then we want more stuff, right? This exists and explains why we keep striving for things in life. Right? It's not like we just get a nice apartment and then we sit down and we're happy forever, right? No, like after a couple of years, you're like, I want a nicer apartment, right? You keep striving for more and more and more. And what's potentially going on here in terms of these fantasies thing is that when you have a desire and you just imagine it in your mind, you have this vivid imagery about that positive thing coming true, maybe you just end up skipping this one, right? Maybe it just kind of turns off the desire to strive, turns off your motivation because you're tricking yourself to kind of feel like you already achieved that thing. It turns out that humans are amazingly good at imagery, imagination, and these vivid kind of playing out life events in our minds, right? Remember one of the first slides in the first class where Dan Gilbert was like, what makes us different from animals is that we have this vivid imagery. We can imagine tons of possible futures. And that's true. We're really, really good at this. So it's possible that just imagining the positive outcome, imagining that goal coming true, that desire coming true, kind of zaps our motivation because our mind is tricked into feeling like we're already there. Pretty weird. Here's a really fascinating study that is cited way too little in my opinion. This is more at like the kind of, let's say, group scale. I'll explain what's going on here. So this x-axis actually represents the amount of positive language and sentiment in financial newspaper articles around the time of the 2007-2008 economic crash. Okay, so what the researchers did here is they quantified the number of positive and negative words and sentiment in financial newspaper articles during the crash, so around the time of the crash. And then what they did is they used that weekly prediction, right, those weekly sentiment numbers to predict changes in the Dow Jones, so actual changes in the market. And you would probably assume, right, that the more positive financial newspapers are talking about the economy in 1 week would increase the Dow Jones in the next week. But they find exactly the opposite. That's pretty weird, right? Again, what's going on here? And the idea is basically that it leads to complacency, right? If I have these positive fantasies, I'm talking positively about things, I lose motivational drive, right? Negative moods are very motivating. There's a reason we feel negative sometimes. Wouldn't it be nice if we were happy all the time and felt positive? Sure, but we wouldn't end up doing anything, right? A negative mood, a negative downturn is a hint, it's a clue, right? That we need to change something, that we need to be motivated and actually change something. So negative things are quite motivating. And if we have all this positive content during this financial crisis, right, even on a week-to-week basis, that can lead to complacency, which can actually impact the market. Now, I have set up an incredible straw man for you. I said, oh, you all believe positive thinking works and you're all suckers and it's wrong. But it turns out I'm kind of lying slightly. So it turns out that the situation is actually a bit more complicated. And positive thinking, yeah, it has negative effects on motivation and these things, but only when it's left on its own. If you just positively fantasize about the future, that is demotivating. However, if you positively fantasize about a future, a goal, something you want to achieve, and then you contrast that with a negative reality, with an obstacle that you currently have, that is amazingly motivating, right? That's much better than anything else. If you only focus on negative realities, also known as rumination, you're probably not going to do anything, right? It's just sad. If you only focus on the positive future, you just fantasize, right? Your head in the clouds, you're just fantasizing all day about all these wonderful things coming true. Nothing's going to happen either. But if you combine these things, right? If you take that initial sense of energization from the positive fantasy, that vivid imagery, oh, it's going to go so well, and then you contrast it with a negative reality or something standing in the way, that is extremely effective. So for instance, if I'm thinking about this course and I'm saying, okay, I have this positive fantasy of doing really well in the course and getting a good grade, right? That's my fantasy. Now I could sit there and just think about it, and that's going to be pretty demotivating. But if I immediately start contrasting that thing with negative realities, right? Like, oh, but I'm really busy the week before the exam. Maybe I should cancel some of those things and then I can study, right? You're identifying a negative reality. You're identifying an obstacle, right, in yourself that you have control over. And once you contrast these two things, that's very motivating. This is known as mental contrasting. I'll show you some data to back this up. This is really niche. So the story actually gets even more complicated. So listen up. Mental contrasting is this one. Indulging is just another word for positive fantasies on their own. Okay? You have on the x-axis here expectations of success, and then you have goal commitment on the y-axis. So what's happening here? So if I mental contrast and I have a low expectation of success in a future goal, then I actually disengage. I give up and I do other things. But if I have high expectations of success, then I really engage. And indulging here is just kind of flat. Let me give you an example of this, or kind of walk through it. If I decided today, I was like, you know what, this whole academic thing, not for me. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to become an astronaut, right? I'm into astronauteering or whatever it's called. And I'm going to go to NASA and I'm going to be like, hey, I'm ready, you know? Right? I could fantasize about this all day long, right? Probably nothing would happen really. Right? Well, maybe I'm just pretty committed to it, maybe not. But if I mental contrast it, suddenly I'll realize something, which is that I will never become an astronaut, right? Like I have stomach queasiness on a carousel. Like you cannot put me in one of those rockets, right? I'm not going to become an astronaut. So if I think about that positive future, becoming an astronaut, so nice, but then I think about the negative reality, which is that there's no way, right? There are too many obstacles in the way, right? Then I would disengage, right? And I let go of that goal. And now that's actually pretty important because now I can focus on other things in life that I can actually do, right? And you find this a lot that people cling to certain goals that maybe they will never reach. The astronaut example is silly, right? But like, think about something much more important. Think about like a romantic relationship you're in, and you're really clinging to it, right? And if you actually think about the obstacles, they're too big, right? They're insurmountable. And so maybe you shouldn't disengage. But if you're in that same relationship, that difficult relationship, let's say, and all you're doing is just fantasizing about how things are going to get better, guess what? It's going to be really hard to disengage, and you're going to be stuck in that relationship for quite a while. Okay? That's pretty crazy. So not only is mental contrasting quite motivating, but it's also specifically motivating for things that we can actually achieve, right? While also letting us disengage from things that we can't actually achieve. Being able to kind of drive us towards letting go of those things that we probably should let go of, right? It's pretty neat. I think this stuff is so cool. This graph is exactly the same thing, just systolic blood pressure. So it's like a physiological measure of motivation and goal commitment. But basically, before I literally walk you through this strategy, I'm going to be your guru and sit in front of you, and we're going to close our eyes and watch this, and it's really fun. I want to just mention really quickly that a lot of this is based on this idea that Dan Gilbert mentioned in the first class, right, on that third or fourth slide, which is that we're so good at visualizing and simulating possible futures, right? And we're so good at simulating these obstacles, these fantasies, right? We, in a sense, are like pilots with a flight simulator. We have this amazing ability to sit there and play possible futures out in our minds. And we can harness that ability to really be able to motivate ourselves, right? And to figure out what we shouldn't disengage from and what we should engage in. That's really neat. That's a skill, right? That's really cool. There's a cool example of this with Michael Phelps, but we don't have time. Here's a little video explaining some of the stuff I said, and then I'll walk you through the exercise.
We're often told to think positive and rid ourselves of harmful negative self-talk. However, research has shown that positive thinking doesn't work nearly as well as we're told. The more students positively envision themselves getting a job, the fewer job offers they received. The more college students envision successfully starting a romantic relationship, the less likely they got together with their crushee. The more hip replacement surgery patients imagined themselves having a smooth recovery, the less they were able to move their new joint. And the more positive overweight people's fantasies about their success in losing weight was, the fewer pounds they lost. Over 20 years, our research has revealed that just dreaming about a positive future saps energy needed to reach the positive future, predicts low physical and mental health, and predicts diminished well-being and poor personal development. But we can perform better if we combine the pleasurable task of envisioning the desired future with additional steps, acknowledging the obstacles we need to surmount, and planning exactly how we will overcome these obstacles. As an approach to behavior modification, this conscious four-step procedure, specifying a wish, specifying and imagining the best outcome, specifying and imagining the obstacles within ourselves, and forming a plan, strengthens mental associations in our minds without our awareness, predicting measurable increases in energy, and in turn, better performance. We call this method WOOP. To test WOOP, we gave a group of high school students preparing to take an important standardized test a short exercise incorporating WOOP, while a second group received a placebo. Students exposed to WOOP completed over 60% more practice questions than participants in the control group. In another study, we gave one group of middle-aged women information about the benefits of a healthy diet, and another group the same information plus WOOP. For a period of up to 2 years, the women who were taught WOOP ate more fruits and vegetables than those in the information-only group. Other intervention studies have shown that people who use this method are losing weight, getting better grades, become successful negotiators, and improve their relationships. The magic of WOOP is that by automating cognition, emotion, and behavior, it triggers people to become motivationally intelligent. It is low cost, easy to use, and can be applied to different life domains and across demographics. By learning and applying WOOP, you will come away more motivated and skilled than ever to make clear decisions, take action, connect with others, and engage with the world. All from a simple but awakening question. What is it that holds you back from fulfilling your wish? For more information, visit woopmylife.org.